What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast. NXT UK TakeOver Blackpool II just ended, so we are going to give you our first impressions, especially since we probably aren't going to go back and watch this a second time, or at least not necessarily before we do this podcast, and our thoughts on all the results, the recap, all that stuff that we normally do here. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, and joining me, as always, are Robert DeFelice.
Hey.
And Callum Wiggins.
Hello.
Howdy, everybody. What is going on? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. Obviously, you should do that on YouTube because you can't do that elsewhere, except for the page on smarkoutmoment.com. So if you are on iTunes or Apple Podcasts is what they refer to now, Google, if you're on TuneIn, or I think we're on iHeartRadio, or any of the different kinds of things. You can't really leave a comment on Spotify. You can't really leave a comment on Stitcher. So hop on over to YouTube, ring that little bell for the notifications to be aware of our videos when they come out, because even though you should be subscribed to the channel, and if you haven't done that, then go ahead and subscribe, sometimes you still don't get those notifications. So that bell helps out with that. But make sure you also like the video and drop a comment below. Tell us your thoughts on these matches and your thoughts on our thoughts on these matches. So that's one plug out of the way. Let's just get the ball rolling here with the pre-show. Not really much going on there. It's typical pre-show where they just sort of run down the card. It's only half an hour, no extra matches into the mix, nothing like that. I thought it was interesting, though, that they gave the ball to Andy Shepherd. He's the ring announcer for the whole thing. And he was the one dictating the pace and, doing the whole, subscribe to the network and you would get TakeOver as well as Worlds Collide and Royal Rumble and all that. Seemed very, very passionate. No Nigel in there, but they had William Regal, they had Tom Phillips. They basically just talked about the card. I don't think we have anything really to say about that other than
I didn't know that was the ring announcer.
Yeah.
He did great. I thought he was fantastic. I'm like, he should do more. He sounded great,
Kind of fits the bill of kind of fits the bill of like a Mike Rome, where he sort of does both. This is the first time that I think, at the very least, that he was doing this instead of that Radzi, whatever his name is. I can never know how to pronounce his last name. But yeah, just one of those things.
He's clearly quite good in the role. I do like the way that he would always say Mr. Eagle rather than like William or something like that, or just like he was always very deferential to William Regal.
He goes from Mr. Regal at the beginning, and then eventually he's just sort of like, yo, Riggs. He's just like, yo, Billy Riggs.
I do think that this was a nice pre-show in that it was treated with respect. I think a lot of the WWE kickoff shows are just the four people having a laugh for an hour or two, and I thought that this was really good. Everybody treated this like it was a major card. Regal is always fantastic. He always knows what to add and when, and I liked it. I can't say anything groundbreaking, but it made me want more of Andy Shepherd.
Yeah, no big announcements, no backstage promos that changed the game for anything. It was, the way that pre-shows should be, I think. I've never understood this idea of, like, for WrestleMania, for instance, a 2-hour pre-show, because you don't need 2 hours of a pre-show. You could have that half an hour where the panel talks about some stuff, and then just make the rest of the card. And, people skip the pre-show because they think that it's skippable. And then you get instances where, for years, nobody watched the cruiserweights because they were like, it's a pre-show, I don't need to watch it. There's no matches on there, it doesn't really matter. Okay, well, there's a match on there, but it's the pre-show, so clearly it doesn't matter because they put it on the pre-show. Make it the pay-per-view starts at 5 o'clock then, and maybe people will tune in more, because this had 5 matches on the card. They didn't add any more, and they had that half an hour, and that's all you needed. Just, here's the card if you missed out on a little bit, here's some backstory, and then there's your matches that we advertised. Much more efficient way of doing things. It's almost like Triple H and them know how to do things more efficiently.
Yeah.
We started off with Eddie Dennis and Trent Seven, and I don't know if I like that this match went on first or if I think that it was a mistake, because I can have two different opinions depending on my outlook of it. Because basically, I'll already say my phrase. What it boils down to is I didn't like this match. I didn't like the segment. I thought that it was horribly uneventful. And really, the only thing that happened was Dennis exposed a turnbuckle. He was going to give a razor's edge to Trent Seven. And the referee said, hey, you can't do that. So he threw him outside the ring onto a member of the ring crew. And then he brought him back in, and then he hit his finisher and he won. It was like they wrestled before that, but the wrestling before that was nothing. So they could have gotten the exact same amount of push for Dennis, bringing him back into the fold as a heel and this dastardly guy would do things like that. They could have gotten the same thing out of doing just that turnbuckle spot on a TV episode. This didn't need to be a match at TakeOver, I think.
I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was. I mean, it was a bit slow in the start of it, and I imagine most of that would come down to just Seven not being the quickest person in the ring. But I think a lot of it was down to Dennis being a little bit, I guess, hesitant with some of his, when he would go for like running big boots and stuff like that. He would feel like, okay, I'm going to take 2-3 steps and make sure that Seven is miles out of the way before I miss this. And it made it look a little bit stilted from time to time. There isn't really much of note that I put down before the final few moments. Like Seven at one point did a corkscrew splash, which I thought was pretty cool. But it all kind of boils down to, as Toni said, the turnbuckle pad spot and the razor's edge over the top rope, which was a pretty cool spot for somebody like Seven to take at his age. And I feel sorry for the guy that he landed on. I assume that that's somebody in the UK Performance Centre.
Sim Snooker.
No, because he actually took all Seven's weight.
That's true. Yeah, if he would have dodged the majority of it, would have been him.
The crowd went crazy for that. So I don't know whether the match was worthy of being on it, because I don't know what other stuff they could have put on here. I mean, maybe if you wanted to do like the Wolf and Dragunov match and would have saved that for this instead, then maybe that would have been better. But I feel like this was just a nice warm-up act. The crowd really like Seven. They really respect his work that he's put into the UK scene. Dennis is a face which is still developing, like his reputation. So if you think that he's going to be a big deal, then you probably should put him on a card like this. And this was probably the best place for it because the crowd was up for the night. They were excited for the show. And so we're able to look past some of the less exciting moments of this match.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. I really felt like Eddie Dennis is going to be a huge deal for them. He's got a good look to him. He presents himself like a star. I just think this was a good case of the veteran putting somebody over, unlike a match we'll talk about later.
I'm not sold on Dennis. I mean, part of it is that he's very lanky and thin. And I don't buy that being the type of thing where it's like, you see Walter and he's big and he's, burly and everything like that, where he could barrel through a crowd and everything. And I buy that it's going to be hard to beat him. But with Dennis, I look at him and I think, like, if he were to be standing next to Roman Reigns, I'd be like, oh, Dennis is going to get his ass whooped in every scenario. And he's not playing a chicken shit heel. He's playing like this cold and calculating, vicious type of person. And I also don't feel like he's got that, how like Randy Orton, it's like, he's a Viper and he's going to strike you and he hits that RKO and he does things like he stomps your appendages and punts your head and all that. Like he
puts you to sleep.
Well, he sells me on the idea that he's like striking and that he's actually thinking about what he's doing. Dennis, to me, strikes me as a guy who's playing the part of a guy who wants to do that. He has not at all sold me yet. So this didn't do any favors for me when it comes to his point of view. And I also just sort of felt like, since this was a letdown, and this was my least favorite match of the card for sure, and I figured that it would be, I was like, well, now we're starting off kind of kind of blah. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, because it's like, is it good to start off blah and continually get better, which I think that they pretty much did throughout the night. It's debatable about the final two, which one's better. Or would it have been better to kind of do something like the ladder match, start off with a bang, go down with Dennis and Seven, and then go back up again or something? I don't know. It's differing opinions, I think.
I think it then depends very much on the crowd that you have trying to power your way through. Like, if you can read the crowd well enough, they obviously decide to go with the idea that it would be better to gradually ramp things up across this show rather than have to go a high-low approach, which most WWE main roster shows seem to apply in order to get the crowd excited and then realise they're going to be tired for the next match. With UK fans, especially if you're only doing a 2.5 hour show, you probably can decide to, okay, we're just going to ramp it up, and try and get them as excited as possible by the time the main event is around. So I think it was the right approach to take it.
Yeah, ultimately, I think it was better. Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of the idea of just ramping it up slowly, like in a more traditional sense, rather than the approach now where, for example, Rollins and Lesnar opened Mania. I never saw the appeal in doing that. So even though this was a bit of a dud, it was in the right spot.
Well, we did take a step in the right direction with the NXT UK Women's Championship triple threat match. Kaylee Ray successfully retains over Toni Storm and Piper Niven. So Callum got that right when I was thinking like that was like they couldn't possibly do that, which again, I'm going to echo those same statements. I'm like, why are they keeping this on Kaylee Ray? Where are they going? I don't know that stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute, but better match than the one before it. I know some people have been saying that it's amazing. I don't agree. I think that it was good. It's fine. It wasn't the type of thing that I'm going to remember by the end of the day, let alone add this to my list of like best matches of the year or anything. And if every match would have been the quality of this, then I would very easily just be like, all right, TakeOver was a bust. Don't bother watching it. Because even though this wasn't bad, it's not standing out to me.
I think it was good, approaching great and memorable, and then it just abruptly ended. So, go ahead.
I'd say put it on the kind of very good spectrum. It's like a 7 out of 10 type match. It had a lot of, I think it was all action. They were really trying to put a lot of stuff into it to try and make it a spectacle. And I think with a triple threat match, especially especially in these sort of circumstances, this sort of crowd, you want to just make a lot of high impact moves as opposed to try and tell a super long story in it, even though they did eventually go into a more storytelling capacity with the Toni Storm, like Piper Niven saving Toni Storm from getting her neck tacked with a steel chair, and then those two teaming up for a little while to take out Kaylee Ray, and then towards the end, Piper Niven breaking up a pin that Toni Storm was going to get over Kaylee Ray, and Toni Storm going crazy and just beating the crap out of Piper Niven for it. So it's kind of like this. Really, it was actually Toni that was the real story of this entire match.
I know it was.
Which I feel was kind of.
I like the Callum.
It took a second to be like, fuck you. I
try and barrel on through his stupidity. It was Storm's match. It was like this. It was kind of her story of this entire thing. Because even though it's weird, because it feels like the continuation will be between Kaylee Ray and Piper Niven, but it was actually what Toni Storm was doing during this match which caught the most attention to me.
And then Niven's the one that takes the pinfall, which to me, I mean, it's not a definitive thing. It's not like they can't just repeat things and stuff either, but that strikes me as odd because first off, I didn't think that Kaylee Ray should retain to begin with. And then I figured if she would retain, that it would be that she would pin Toni Storm, and Toni Storm would just start moving with the NXT crew, NXT proper, so to speak, or whatever. And that Piper Niven would be in that sort of scenario where she'd be like, well, I didn't get pinned, and, you didn't fight me one-on-one, or some kind of thing like that. But it's Niven who takes the pin. So then I'm like, all right, well, we already had Kaylee Ray beat Toni Storm, Xia Brookside, Tegan Knox, now Piper Niven, and Isla Dawn. Those are all the baby faces. She's beaten them all. And going back to Toni Storm at this point later feels like, why didn't you just do it at Blackpool? And if they put the title on Niven, I'll be thinking the same thing of just, why didn't you put the title on her at Blackpool? Like, we don't even have Worlds Collide set up where it would need to be Rhea Ripley versus a heel, because they already announced that it's going to be Toni Storm versus Rhea Ripley. So now we don't even have champion versus champion. So I'm really questioning what the point of all that is.
Well, they kind of put themselves in a corner, like already announcing that it was going to be Rhea Ripley defending the title against Toni Storm. So you can't realistically have Toni Storm take the pinfall in this match, because then why would she be getting a championship opportunity, the NXT title? Why would she move up after losing a match? And technically she does lose this match, but she doesn't take the pinfall, so you can kind of weasel your way out of that one. So if you are going to keep the title on Kaylee Ray, you have to pin Piper Niven, which, again, I can't say I'm in full agreement of, because if you should really concentrate on the brand that you're working on as opposed to just a show that's coming up, which, even though it is shaping, obviously they build up towards at the end of the show as well, which we'll talk about, and it's building up to be a nice show. It's just a show that's like this extra additional thing, rather than like being something super like well, I don't know how good it will end up being. Hopefully it'll be a good show as well, but it doesn't feel like it's very significant to just have an NXT versus NXT UK show.
If they were to add stakes to it, I think it would be a more intriguing show. But the way they have it structured right now, it seems like something that we can almost skip.
Yeah, because it's been presented in the same way that Survivor Series was presented, in that these guys team together in Survivor Series. Like, we had NXT UK and NXT guys like pair up with each other to fight the rest of the WWE people. And now they've just decided, okay, we've got this Worlds Collide show coming up, so they fabricated some sort of issue between all of these groups. And it's just like, okay, Undisputed Era come out and attack at the end of it or whatever. Or Toni Storm is going after Rhea Ripley. It's, okay, you've just come up with that stuff because you need to do it, because that's the gimmick of the show. You've not done it because there's been a long-standing tension between the two groups, or the two groups have been saying that this is the real NXT brand. Just, okay, it's that time of year again. Let's just, change things up a little bit.
Yeah, I think they would have been better off running NXT UK TakeOver, NXT TakeOver Houston.
Depending on the scenario of how they want to build Portland, like they already kind of have some of the matches set for Portland. It seems like it's Ciampa versus Cole, Balor versus Gargano, Keith Lee. Keith Lee is not doing that.
Keith Lee versus Strong, right?
No,
that's happening. That's
happening in a week.
Couple of weeks, yeah.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, so that's, I don't know where they're going to go in that direction. And then if they finish the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic ahead of time, then maybe that factors in with like a tag title shot or something. If the Undisputed Era don't just win, but if they would have wanted to really build towards something with Worlds Collide of like pure NXT versus NXT UK, they could have pretty easily done something where NXT celebrating the win at Survivor Series and NXT UK is like, yeah, well, you owe it to us for being able to do this and do that, and you think you're the real top thing, but NXT UK usurps you, and they could have been doing something like that, and I think that they didn't bother. But since they didn't do that, it's weird that they announced the whole Toni Storm thing, because I took that as, okay, well, we're going to do champion versus champion and whatever like that, and that's how they would do the setup. And then once she said, I'll win your title and whatever, I'm like, well, they can't do champion versus champion if it's a title match. And then now that they are in a scenario where it's Toni Storm versus Rhea Ripley, I'm thinking to myself, well, why is it Toni Storm versus Rhea Ripley anyway? What does Toni Storm deserve a title shot at this one, and then 2 weeks later a title shot at the other one for?
Well, you see, Tony, she was the first person to come out to talk to Rhea Ripley after she came out, so automatically she's the number one contender. That's kind of how things work around here.
Oh man, the girls need to start getting to Gorilla quicker then. Jeez.
That's I don't know why I know that obviously the reason why is because they think that, hey, Toni Storm is a big thing in NXT UK and Rhea Ripley's a thing, and they feuded before, and now we'll do that, and that'll sell. But
I mean, it's slightly more humane than like Samoa Joe going on a 6-month losing streak and then attacking Kofi Kingston, and he's immediately #1 contender for the WWE Championship.
These are things that happen.
Yeah.
Although, what did Toni Storm do the past couple of months?
She won at Survivor Series.
Was she a part of the?
She was part of the NXT.
No, she got eliminated, didn't she?
Yeah, but
she won,
was part
damn
of the
it.
team.
No. Her and was it Candice didn't get eliminated? They
no,
just
it was
sort
Io
of...
and Candice.
Oh.
So,
all right, then she got eliminated.
So
I got.
I think that they would have been better suited off if they would have just said Toni Storm came. Well, I mean, this is another weird thing. I'm going down a different tangent on here, but I'm watching The Bump, and Toni Storm is interviewed, and this is taking place Wednesday morning. So she gets asked about the Rhea Ripley thing, and she's like, "Yeah, remember that time that I beat her?" And then later on, in that same night, they do the whole thing with Wednesday, the recording with NXT, and she cuts a promo that basically hinges on, "Remember that time I beat you?" And I'm like, did she think of that earlier than the day and just said, "Hey, I want to say that again later"? Or
this is WWE mandating you to watch The Bump, so things make sense. They keep putting stuff on The Bump and on these shows, so you feel compelled, or at least if you're in, our field, or if you're a really big diehard fan, I've got to watch everything because you never know what's going to be said.
Well, no, I mean, she just said the same exact thing.
Yeah,
it's just remember I beat you.
That's because they know a lot of people don't watch The Bump.
I kind of feel like they missed an opportunity to just say Rhea Ripley faces whoever wins the NXT UK Women's Championship at TakeOver Blackpool. Watch it, because if you don't watch it, you might not know who's going to face her, like that. And then just have her beat Kaylee Ray. To me, that seems like that makes a little bit more sense, because I really can't imagine anybody right now who isn't already like somebody like me. I watch all this crap, so I'm going to watch Worlds Collide. I'll do my live coverage. I'll have my post show, all the same kind of stuff. But, I got a bunch of different friends that probably don't even know that that's going to happen, let alone care enough to watch it. And I could probably text Dace right now, or Brett, or Chuck, or Dane, or like a bunch of different people, and be like, "So are you guys more interested in watching Worlds Collide since it's Toni Storm versus Rhea Ripley, or would you be up for Kaylee Ray versus Rhea Ripley?" And the response would probably be the same of, "Who the fuck are they?" Because that's just what casual people would end up doing, So why not have it be champion versus champion? That makes more sense to me. Then you give a heel to Rhea Ripley, and she beats him. And I don't know. This is all strange to me, because if you're getting NXT versus NXT UK, and right now it's looking like the NXT UK Women's Champion just maybe won't do anything, that's kind of strange. Now we don't know what's going forward with Kaylee Ray. They could try to do something weird, maybe they're recording something on the 17th, I think, 17th and 18th or so. It's like their next set of recordings. So maybe they do some kind of a title change.
I know the answer. Why are you so desperate for them to get the title off Kaylee Ray?
It's not even so much to get it off of Kaylee Ray. I just kind of don't see where they can go after this, because she beat every single babyface, and it's just repeating the same thing. Or
the options for me are, you do a one-on-one match with Piper Niven, which probably is the likely course of action, or two, Jazzy Gabert is turning face soon, so that's who you put the title on afterwards.
Because the Niven thing, to me, if you're going to go in the direction of a one-on-one match, then Toni Storm should have taken the pin. And that way it gives Niven a chance to say that she deserves it, because now if Niven comes out, if we're treating this like it's supposed to be real, which of course it's totally not. If I were Sid Scala, first off, I'd be like, "Hey, how come I'm not, just fully in charge here? Johnny Saint's not doing jack shit." And then,
well, that's your actual job, don't it?
Yeah, that's a different story. But the Niven thing, like if Niven were to be like, "I deserve a title shot," I'd be like, "No, Toni Storm had you pinned, and Kaylee Ray pinned you, so both of them basically beat you. Out of anybody, you're completely proven wrong there. See you later, Piper. You have to earn your way back all the way up again." And then we're just kind of repeating all the same thing again, just to get to Kaylee Ray versus Piper Niven again. Like, it's got to be Jazzy, I guess. and I'm just kind of curious why they decided to go, if they go in that direction, to go with Jazzy over Piper.
There's also, as Brooke said, they can build up. There are people within the fold that can, work, but I'm just a little bit surprised, and you must be in a really good mood because you're sure putting a lot of thought into this idea that Piper Niven took the pin when WWE does whatever they want. They can find a reason for her to have a one-on-one match.
Yeah, but if I don't hold them accountable for these things, then everything could just be, well, they do whatever they want and it's all nonsense and all that, and then there's no show because then then what are we talking about? It's Rusev came out and he's got a green screen behind him, and yeah, just go with it. It's that whole like enjoy it for what it is BS. Fuck you. Follow logic.
Oh, you never know. They could throw like Bianca Belair just shows up like, hey, I want a title shot at Worlds Collide. If Toni Storm gets a NXT title shot, then I want an NXT UK title shot. There's so many paths.
I'd be cool with that. Although, more than likely, that would mean Kaylee Ray would beat somebody that I like better. So I don't know about that either. They need to win by DQ. There you go. Get that title off Kaylee Ray. Any other thoughts on this triple threat?
I thought it was weird that the frog splash was the kicker, because Toni Storm, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't regularly use frog splash, so I just felt like, that's weird. That was the finish. Felt anticlimactic, just as the match was building to a really good point.
I would say that Piper Niven showed no signs of like illness or anything like that, which is a good sign.
Oh yeah, that's right. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, so obviously she didn't seem to be suffering at all from Bell's palsy, so great job on like beating that and putting in an excellent performance. I did not expect the Canadian Destroyer, but then again, I don't know if I can. At this point, I don't know if I should ever go into a match not expecting a Canadian Destroyer, because it seems to be the move that everyone does now,
including Ricky Morton and Dustin Rhodes somehow.
Yeah, so. Yeah, but overall, just fun match and the crowd was into it. So, yeah, thumbs up from me.
It's almost like somebody woke up, or not somebody, like the whole wrestling world woke up in 2019 and went, hey, that's kind of a pile driver. And they're just sort of like, new pile driver,
Well, I think the reason why we're seeing it so much in WWE is because I don't think that Vince McMahon knows that's a pile driver.
Yeah.
He just allows that move because he saw it in that match between Mysterio and Andrade and thought, oh, that looks cool. Everyone should be doing that.
He's like, wow, what a sunset flip. What a maneuver. Yeah. I forget what I was listening to. Actually, no, that's what it was. It was, which I haven't got a chance to check it out yet, but the Kane episode of Broken Skull Sessions, which we're going to talk about on the hot tags tomorrow. But there was a quick little segment on like a YouTube video or something of him doing impressions or something. And his impression for Vince was to just say, what a maneuver. I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. Good old school Vince.
There's something funny to me about the idea of Vince McMahon going, that was cool. Paul, come here. Let me do that to you. I want to do that.
Get Kurt Angle. I'm going to out-wrestle him while we're at it, But we moved on from that to Tyler Bate versus Jordan Devlin. I don't think that any of us are surprised. You take two good people or work well in the ring, you put them together, and you say wrestle, and they have a good match. I mean, it's kind of... You put butter on something that tastes good, it's going to make it taste better. It's just the recipe for success. So I like this match. Tyler Bate won by pinfall.
Tyler Bate butter.
Tyler Butter. I can't really get anything going on with that. I'm sure the fans could chant something, though, since they usually chant...
Butterbait.
Butterbait.
This is my match of the night.
Yeah,
but
really?
by a considerable distance. I just thought that these two worked phenomenally with each other. Jordan Devlin is really, really coming along great as a solid heel worker that does stuff that's flashy enough to keep the crowd interested, but can also weave in a bit of just old school heel shtick. And then Tyler Bate is a phenomenon, essentially. He has the crowd completely in the palm of his hands at everything that he does. He's an ultimate babyface, and just I still can't believe that he's 22 years old and he can wrestle like that, because he's going to be wrestling, assumingly, with that sort of style and intensity for the next 15 to 20 years. And that's really exciting to look forward to. But yeah, I thought by a country mile, this was the best match of the night.
Yeah, this was fantastic. And I don't want to belabor anything you guys already said. You put two guys in the ring that know how to work, and it's great. I just think Jordan Devlin needs to win something at some point. Otherwise, it's just going to be, oh, here's that cool guy that has a pretty good match and then loses.
Yeah, but I mean, this match just had everything to it. So it had like Spanish flies off the top rope and like these punching exchanges in the middle of the ring, which whipped the crowd up into a frenzy. That giant airplane spin, which lasted about 30 seconds. Headbutts, springboard tornado DDTs. The only real botch spot, I guess, was that cutter they tried to do on the ring apron, because Bate just landed, that his head just went into Devlin's shoulder, so it looked a little bit awkward. But other than that, it was flawless, and yeah, these two are two of the best that they have, and they need to position them that way.
In typical fashion, people are already doing the whole you graded the Tyler Bate match really weak. I gave it like a B+ or something. Like, it's not everything has to be the best thing in the world or awful. I don't kind of
get... If all nights are legendary, no nights are legendary.
Yeah, I don't quite get that. Like, I like this match. This was a good match. It was very fun. It was a step up from the match before it. Like, it's two good people wrestling a good match. Like, I don't have any complaints. It's not like, every slice of pizza I have isn't the best slice of pizza I've ever had in my life, and I'm, stretching out my pants because of it or something.
Well, I would say that even though I know we're only 12 days in, this is the best WWE match of the year so far.
Oh yeah,
in my mind.
Yeah,
it will no doubt be beaten, for at least to my opinion. But it's still like way up there in terms of like it's going to take a good amount of effort to beat it. But yeah, and I think that having the standing ovation at the end of it that Triple H, Johnny Saint and William Regal were doing was a nice touch. I just watched the ending of that, like with Bate celebrating, whipping the crowd up, like getting super excited. And I thought, yeah, this guy should be the next guy to challenge Walter again.
He is good. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But Walter's only had 2 matches on a takeover for the belt, and one of them has been with Bate.
It's really strange. I got the same sort of feeling about Bate afterward. I was like, oh, he should go fight for the... And I'm like, oh, he already did. It's just one of those things that,
I think we as a culture have well, maybe it's just us, but a lot of people, I feel, share this sort of opinion. Just the idea that rematches should never happen. Like, you should only ever see a match once. And then that's kind of, as soon as you see it the second time, it's the law of diminishing returns. Oh, Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega are fighting for the second time a year and a half after their first match. Oh, they've seen it already. It's like, come on, you need to... There's a finite number of wrestlers, a finite number of great wrestlers, and they can tell different stories of sequels. Like, there is another way of doing this. Bate should be the person based on who is the babyface that gets the biggest reaction in the entire audience. Dragunov is great, yes, and you'd have people like Dave Mastiff and Trent Seven and other people that are like good baby faces that get good reactions, but nobody gets the reaction that Tyler Bate does. So he should be the guy that beats Walter.
To me, there's a distinction between doing the rematches where somebody's earned their way back into the mix versus the way that WWE tends to do it, which is just, we're doing that again. And like, here's a good example. Like, if they were to take Tyler Bate after this match and have him say, I think I've worked my way towards a title shot, and maybe do some kind of a thing where over the course of the next bunch of weeks, we get like a couple other people that are saying the same thing, and Tyler Bate beats a couple other people too, then maybe have some kind of a gimmick match or something like that, where it's a little bit different. Whereas like that way you built up a little bit more, you picked up some steam, and you justified it more. But look at Baron Corbin versus Roman Reigns.
No, I don't want to.
Yeah. Like, we're getting that now at Royal Rumble, and it's less than what we got. Like, all we're getting is the same match we got at TLC, but without the gimmick behind it. So they took a step backward for that.
Yeah, but Tony, you're comparing a previous like Tyler Bate versus Walter match, which is like prime filet mignon, against Roman Reigns versus Baron Corbin, which is dog food.
No, I mean, just in theory about the whole, like, how they took a step backward with the Roman Reigns thing. Like, that to me is completely asinine for them to say one of our big selling points for TLC is that these two are finally going to fight and it's going to be all these weapons and stuff. And then that should have basically been the end of the feud. And then you wait a couple weeks and then they go, those two are going to fight again, but not with the weapons.
Yeah,
and you go, well, shit, why do I care? Like,
yeah.
So that's the poor way that they tend to do a lot of those things, which makes me confused. And, like, why would you possibly care to see this more than you did before? And why would you not want to see, like, Roman Reigns and the Usos against Corbin and Rude and Ziggler instead, or something, like, where they could have changed it up a little bit? And Bate is in a scenario where if he were to fight Walter and they were to try to act like they didn't do it before, that would get under my skin.
They definitely wouldn't act like they hadn't done it before. They would just be, this is Bate's, like, second. You could maybe do the idea of, like, this is Bate's second and last chance.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do something to it. Either that's the last he can do and he won't be able to challenge for the title as long as Walter's holding it, or
and
lumberjack match or something. I don't know. Like,
yeah. I mean, basically, it's the idea that there isn't they won't do another UK pay-per-view probably for another 6 months at the very least. So you've got 6 months to build him up to face Walter again.
That's my reasoning for wanting somebody new, because by the time we get to takeovers, it just seems like the roster's thin when there are quite a few people that enjoy seeing guys like, Massive Dave Mastiff. I think he'd be a good challenge for Walter. I will agree that nobody's over like Bate, and Bate should be moved in, and I don't think it's right to compare NXT UK or NXT anything to the main roster because they're just two different animals. But I would like to see somebody else get the nod.
I just don't see anyone on the NXT UK roster that stands up to it. And maybe they can build them up in the next 6 months, and hopefully they do. But let's face it, if you're going to try and draw eyes to the next show, because realistically, a lot of people, ourselves probably included, don't watch NXT UK religiously. So we only watch when the big shows are on. So are we going to be more interested in tuning in if it's Tyler Bate versus Walter, or it's Dragunov or Mastiff or Banks or I don't know, just some other randomer, really? It's you need to try and sell it, really, and Bate is your best opportunity of doing that.
I guess I'm okay with him being Mr. NXT UK.
Yeah, I mean, Bate was the first champion. He's one of the most popular. He's one of the best as far as just go out there and have a good match and be reliable. So it's not like they're just sort of out of the blue being like Sam Gradwell, or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand Ross' point. Like, in an ideal world, you would just always be bringing in someone new and fresh and really, like, is really getting the crowd momentum behind him and all of that stuff, so it keeps things, like, alive and keep things going. But occasionally, but that's not how things happen in reality. And if they had this, like, this conveyor belt of, okay, we've just got this new star coming up and this new star coming up, then that'd be great, but it's not going to work that way. So every single promotion relies on the same group of people at the top, just essentially trading wins for a good span of time. It's just the way things work. So I expect it to be the same way here. So I would preliminarily put the title match for the next takeover as Walter versus Bate 2, but if not, then it probably would be Dragunov because they seem to be positioning him in that position instead.
Yeah, I'm figuring that it's probably Dragunov. Which, I mean, that's fine. Like, Dragunov is getting his boost here and there, and, you know, I mean, I can't think of anybody else. Like, they didn't put Mastiff in a position that he could do it, so Dragunov is pretty much the next in line.
Yeah, I mean, I personally see that as more of, like, a TV match you build up in, like, 2 or 3 months' time, rather than an actual takeover show. But
for Dragunov or for Mastiff?
Yeah, for Dragunov. Well, maybe for both of them.
Because I could see them, like, if they don't do Dragunov I mean, it also depends on when they want to do this next event, because Cardiff was, like, what, October, I think? Or September, or something like that? August?
Yeah, it was August 31st.
So January and August.
It was the same day as All Out, remember?
Yeah, it was the same day as All Out and the same day as that New Japan show. So, it's etched in my brain.
If we figure that they're waiting another 7-8 months at the very least, that's a long time to stretch out the Dragunov thing. He's already pretty much in that spot as it is, and within the next set of tapings, because the next tapings are, got to double check about that, because I'm pretty sure that it kind of has to happen pretty soon. They don't have anything else. It's the 17th and 18th, York Barbican. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. So that is going to continue all the way up until March 6th and 7th in Skydome. Then May 1st and 2nd, and then July 24th and 25th. So they already planned out, at least as far as that, a couple different branches of tapings. And I would think that with the January set of tapings, that's going to lead all the way up until March. The March one's going to lead all the way into May. That pretty much shows that there's not going to be one around WrestleMania. There's likely not going to be one anytime really soon. So the earliest that they could really do the next thing is towards the end of July, right before that the Brayhead one. That's a long time to stretch out a Dragunov thing.
Yeah, that's why I kind of have the assumption that Dragunov is going to be a TV title match, same way that he'll probably have defenses against Mastiff or Travis Banks and people like that, and then you build up towards whoever your challenger would be. Which, like just off the top of my head, the only people that I feel like would be in a position to challenge Walter by that point would be Tyler Bate or maybe Jordan Devlin if you turn him babyface, or if you brought Pete Dunne back to the UK roster.
There's nobody on the regular NXT roster other than Pete Dunne that really would fit in the NXT UK side, right? Kind of blanking on people that wouldn't.
No, nobody that really, like, it would just be like a forced in thing, like Cassius Ohno being the best British wrestler of all time. There's not really anyone that has that those UK ties, or European even. But
yeah, because it's like, you know, Angel Garza.
I mean, maybe Dijakovic, because he's Croatian, so he does have at least some European aspect to his character.
How wild would it be if it was just like Isaiah Swerve Scott? You know, like.
Well, I just don't feel there'd be like a big enough deal. Especially, you'd have to be someone who is either from the UK or at least from a territory which is like seen as affiliated to the UK, or somebody that had a big reputation from the UK independent scene. I don't really see anyone from the current NXT roster that really has that. There's only a few people that are really on the WWE roster that have that. Like, you could do Sheamus or Cesaro, but I don't imagine they would do either of those.
I think if somebody from the WWE roster comes over, it'll be Drew McIntyre, because he beat Walter. They always have that in their back pocket. But also, maybe we're jumping the gun, and maybe they do another takeover in May. You know, maybe then you could do Tyler Bate. It all depends on when they want to do it.
I mean, technically speaking, they could always put Dragunov versus Walter on a regular NXT takeover. They've done that.
Oh, that's right.
So
We have the Mania takeover to build to.
we've got Portland and we've got Tampa. They could always just have those two, and I would assume probably more than likely they would do that for the Tampa one. And
Yeah, they could definitely
you
do
know that could be where they change the title or something like that. It's a shame that Finn Balor's a heel, because Finn Balor would be probably the perfect person to put in that scenario. Have him beat Walter and do that. But instead, I don't know. Maybe we're getting Boa.
You know what? You know what I would do, and this will be
Bronson
my final.
Reed.
Not Bronson Reed. No, not here. Not here. But you put Walter in the Rumble. You have him eliminate McIntyre. You have McIntyre challenge Walter for the title in Tampa. Give McIntyre something to do in Tampa rather than, the nothing he has been doing on Raw.
He's been counting down 3, 2, 1 and hitting a Claymore that somebody else should have as their finisher.
Yeah, he has been doing that. He also counted down 3, 2, 1 when he was in 3MB. So, not a good sign.
Bate wins that by pinfall, again with a match finisher that isn't really his finisher. He did a corkscrew splash of sorts, that was kind of interesting. Instead of the Tyler Driver 97. 97, right? Or is it 98?
Yeah, 97.
Doesn't somebody have like a 98 as their finisher? There's too many goddamn finishers at this point.
No,
I wouldn't know. Usually when they have like the 97 or so like that put under it, it's usually the date that they were born, or at least the year they were born. That's why he has the 97.
It could just be that he did 97 of them in a row one night. They were just like, there you go. Well, we went to the NXT UK Tag Team Championship Fatal 4-Way ladder match after this. Gallus against Grizzled Young Veterans, against Imperium, against South Wales Subculture. This match I thought was a lot of fun, as expected. You get a bunch of people with a bunch of ladders. Again, it's a recipe for success. And everybody had their little times to shine. Not a whole lot of things that stand out to me as far as like, this is the part where Grizzled Young Veterans did this, and then this is the part where Imperium did that. But I do want to call attention to one spot, which was clearly a planned scenario of both members of Gallus on tables, and Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster would have done in sync swanton bombs off the ladder and through the table with them. Well, they put Mark Coffey on top, and it just collapses. So you could tell that they're like, shit, what do we do? And they're talking to each other and all that. And their solution to it was for both of them to do a swanton onto Wolfgang together. And it was a little bit messy, as was the whole match. But I thought that was pretty cool for them to just call that audible. And to go with something that, they didn't necessarily need to do. They could have very easily just been like, well, that didn't work, so Flash Morgan Webster does his, and that's the end of it. And they tried. They didn't get hurt. I like that.
And I like messy in a match like this. It's not supposed to be, a perfect choreographed dance. There's variables that you just can't account for. So I like that. I thought this was a really good match overall. I like that the teams looked like teams. They matching gear, just everything. Tag team wrestling in NXT just tends to click. I don't understand why Gallus won. I guess I had just worked myself up in my mind that it was all about making sure Imperium gets all the belts, so it's champions versus champions at Worlds Collide. But Gallus wins, and I can't wait to see what they do next.
Yeah, this was a very good ladder match. There was a lot of like innovative spots. It's difficult to do innovative spots in ladder matches nowadays because it feels like everything's been done, but they managed to add a few like variations to do some of their signature moves on. The table spot was like the one real kind of red flag in this entire thing, but they made up for it. So props to Andrews and Webster for thinking on their feet and coming up with something which was fairly unique. I don't recall ever seeing two guys at the same time doing a swanton bomb through somebody on a table, so that's a unique way of doing it. I thought basically everybody looked good in this match. I think the closing moments when they had Wolfgang charge Eichner through a ladder and the ladder just basically implodes. It almost feels like they had to put like a small detonator in the ladder to make all the pieces fly out as far as they did. But it was just very well put together, and I was expecting Gallus to win, and yeah, they did. So
right call was made, I think. If they would have given it to Imperium, I feel like Gallus would have ended up looking kind of cheap and transitional champions.
And I agree with that, but part of me felt like, because I was convinced before the NXT show that, yeah, Gallus were going to retain the title here. And then I watched Gallus versus Undisputed Era on the NXT show and kind of thought, yeah, these guys aren't tag team champions.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say they stunk the joint up, but they're just not on the same level as NXT's tag team champions. And maybe and that's like, it's a high bar to try and live up to, but they were so far below that level that it kind of stuck out. And I kind of watched that match and thought, well, they might just call an audible here and put the title on someone else just so Gallus don't hold it, because they clearly don't have the same, like, they don't have the same level. They're not at the same level as some of the other teams in this match.
I agree with you.
I fully agree too.
But,
if you were to rank these kind of different teams, to me, Imperium is definitely number one. And Gallus is kind of like the sum of its three parts. And even then, I mean, a lot of people talk about this kind of whole setup, but like whenever you do this expand and contract type of thing, like the brand split, when we get the brand split proper, we end up having more people on each show. And then once that contracts again, it's kind of like the big bang and the big crunch. You end up having too many people and you need to get rid of some of them. And then that makes you start looking at the roster and going, well, how many people do we really need? And somebody like Gallus, they're a big deal on NXT UK, but in the grand scheme of things in WWE, they're really not. And if you were to tell me, like, you got to get rid of some people in NXT UK, if you got rid of Gallus, I wouldn't feel like you lost a massive, massive thing. If you got rid of Imperium, I'd be like, damn, there goes, some of the best people think they got going on for them. Like Bartel in particular has gone from a guy that I'm like, they should just release him and he's not really doing anything, to me being like, this guy's got something on his own even. Even if he wasn't a part of this group, I kind of feel like Bartel has something. And, if you're going to go by like value, Imperium would beat out Gallus to me, but Imperium's got all that momentum anyway. Gallus needs a little bit of something. So keep it on Coffey, keep it on Wolfgang for now. Imperium's going to win it eventually anyway.
Agreed. But you know what? Zach Gibson, I was watching that pre-match promo. Zach Gibson is money. And he needs to be a single so they can start printing out that money.
Does
James Drake ever really talk?
He doesn't need to. He's got Zach Gibson.
He's kind of like the crazy, like, just say one line at the end of a Gibson diatribe. But yeah, that's how the team works.
It's pretty much like Gibson's like, blah, 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 this and that. 2.5 minutes later, whatever, Drake's like, yep. It's sort of like, okay.
I think if you have the gift of the gab like Gibson has, you don't really need to, like, the other guy can just stand there and just, okay, I'll just be the crazy guy in the match taking the more high risk bumps.
Yeah, it's very strange, but it works. So they're cool. South Wales subcultures, they did their whole thing. Imperium, they filled their role in this match. I liked it quite a bit. Before we get into the main event, quick couple of plugs. There is the Patreon that you should be aware of. If you haven't already listened to any of the other kind of plugs that we've done with the Patreon, it's Patreon. Donate to it if you got the spare change, and that'd be awesome. I just earlier today at like 3:30 in the morning, I put up the first Darkcast, which is just me kind of tired and just rambling about a couple of different things that have been on my mind recently about the idea of Kenny Omega being this generation's version of Sting, and that we're on the wrong wrestling timeline, which then I started going down a thing about how maybe we'll make that a segment and stuff. So if you want access to that, you have to donate to the Darkcast level on Patreon, and you can't listen to it otherwise. That's kind of the whole point of being Patreon exclusive. So check that out. If you want to do the Pick Your Poison tier, that's something to be aware of as well. That's when you can request us to do some kind of a special feature that we might not necessarily have the time to do other than that. And I don't know what we're going to be doing in the next one of those coming up soon. I got to sort of square that up and figure that out. But Patreon, great source of continuing the motivation and continuing Smark Moment and Smack Talk. So if you got the spare change and you want to toss it our way, go ahead and do that. You could also do the same with the merchandise shops on TeePublic and Redbubble. So pick up a t-shirt or any other the kind of designs and products that they have to offer there. Do the same thing for fanboysanonymous.com, which is my site for movie reviews and other kind of geek culture topics. So follow fanboys all over the place on Facebook and Twitter, just like you would with Smark Out Moment. Follow the YouTube channel, check out the Patreon, check out the merch shops, all that other kind of stuff. Just start clicking around. So our main event was Walter versus Joe Coffey for the United Kingdom Championship. Really random, just little thing to put out there. I think that this week was the first time that I remember anybody referring to it as the NXT United Kingdom Championship.
Did they finally do that? I missed that.
They did refer to it as, I think it was maybe Kathy Kelly or somebody. I'm blanking on who it was now. But somebody had specifically said, they're going to fight for the NXT United Kingdom Championship. And I was like, oh, are we finally referring to it as the NXT UK Championship the way that we should with everything else and just kind of keep that going, because that makes the most sense. But maybe not. Maybe it still is just the WWE United Kingdom Championship. I don't know. Either way, Walter retained by submission, and I didn't give this match as much credit as I should have when we were doing our predictions. I figured that this would just sort of be a slow and lumbering two guys doing whatever, and we know that we're just waiting for Joe Coffey to lose, and this ended up being a hell of a lot of fun. I like this a lot. I don't even know if I necessarily like it the best out of all the matches. This might have been my favorite match of the night. Bate and Devlin was obviously good. The tag team ladder match I thought was very good. So the 3 good matches in a row, that's a big step up from the Eddie Dennis one. And I really, at a couple parts in this, I was like, you know what? They might actually give this to Coffey. And that's what I want to feel. I want them to convince me that I was dead wrong and counting out Joe Coffey. So this was a really good step in the right direction for me with Coffey, to where I'm like, I actually, if we talked about Gallus not being worth all that much, I'd be like, you can kind of get rid of those other 2, but maybe keep Joe Coffey in the mix.
Well, you should have learned that last year when he tore the house down with Pete Dunne. That's why I knew going into this that this would be a really good match, but I never felt the same feelings of, okay, Walter might lose here. My only gripe about this match would be the amount of hoopla that surrounded a little bit, with the referee going down and then Dragunov comes in, and he, first of all, when he flexed, this dude just suddenly went from like a skinny fat dude to like, wow, he's ripped to the gills, and he looks great. He seems like a babyface that everybody's really into. I enjoyed the spot where they didn't do the traditional, he's going to hit Wolf with the uppercut, but he moved and he hit Coffey by accident. No, they had him hit Wolf into Coffey, which set up the knee injury. There's little nuances like that that really separate NXT from the main roster. And wow, Walter took Dragunov's head off with that clothesline. Like, that was a really stiff clothesline, or at least came across that way. And Walter is a top 5 wrestler right now, I think. I mean, really, this dude can do it all, and he looks believable, and he should be on any show at any time because he's that good.
I love Walter matches. I find them really, really intense, and they have an element of realism to them that you don't get in a lot of other matches, which is fine. Obviously, we know wrestling's fake and all that other stuff, but at least every now and again you like just be taken in with like, wow, these guys look like they're really just beating the shit out of each other, and that's a great feeling to have. But having said that, as a match that I still really enjoyed because it's Walter's type of match, and that's always great. I'm so uninvested in Joe Coffey as just a personality. I can't fault his, like, he does have a good amount of in-ring ability, and he clearly puts a lot of effort in, and he's very physical. I just don't think that there's anything about him that connects me with him. Like, I don't really buy into any sort of this Iron King or this other stuff, this like this is my kingdom stuff. It just feels a bit forced. I'm struggling to really get the sense of, yes, he's a good wrestler and he's head of this stable, but why is this guy been in the main event of 2 of your 3 UK takeovers? This guy, out of all the people that you have on the roster,
well, that's kind of like where I can backtrack to what Rob said, where he said I should have been sold on Joe Coffey from the Pete Dunne thing. Originally, I wrote that off as, well, Pete Dunne has great matches with everybody. It was a Pete Dunne thing. And I didn't really give Coffey the credit for it. And this time, I left this going, Coffey had that match and he had this match. Okay, that means that Coffey can actually kind of go. And I don't buy him being... What's a good way to put this? Like, even though at points in the match, I was starting to think, wow, they actually might do it. In the back of my mind, I'm like, but they're not. And that's because it's, Walter is Walter, and they've got the Worlds Collide thing coming up, and why would he just lose here to Coffey, and why to Coffey, and all those kind of lingering thoughts and stuff, which get in the way. But like, if Coffey were to have, if they create like a mid-card title, I'd be like, yeah, Coffey's got to be one of the people in contention to win that. Kind of the same as, I guess, some of the other people that are in like the main roster and stuff. Like, I don't buy Ricochet, for instance. When people bring up the idea of like Ricochet could fight Brock Lesnar, I'm like, he's not going to fight Brock Lesnar. He's not even going to fight him, let alone he couldn't beat him. And Coffey, if you were to put him up against like a Roman Reigns, I'm like, he's completely different levels. But NXT UK, I'm buying Joe Coffey being somebody.
I'm still completely struggling with the whole Gallus faction and Joe as much as anybody else. It's just, yeah, he's a good hand. If he got released tomorrow, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
It's like, he's just a guy. And I feel like if this is the guy who's been in, well, let's face it now, more NXT UK TakeOver main events than anyone other than him and Walter share that prestigious honor. There's like, okay, there's one of these things is not like the other. Walter is a bona fide star that you could make into the greatest monster heel in the past like decade or so, but the other guy is just a guy. He's a good worker. He's a guy though, and you just replace his name with anybody else, and it doesn't really make. It could probably make a bit more difference if you had someone like had built someone up like a Tyler Bate or even in a Dragunov. Like as soon as he came out, the crowd came a little bit more alive. But I mean, and again, that didn't improve my enjoyment of the match with all the ref bump bullshit. Even though that ref bump was one of the greatest ref bumps I've seen in recent memory, because he just gets launched all the way across the ring. But I just feel, and the match went on too long. I know that's kind of a thing that's happening with Walter's matches, but like, why does it take so much to end it? Why were there so many things after the interference? Why did the match go on for another like 5 to 10 minutes after that interference spot?
So, yeah, I think if they want to trimmed maybe 2-3 minutes out of that, it could have been a little bit more efficient.
I would have taken 10. I would have taken 10 off of it. But that's just me. I appreciate the fact that they have Walter have multiple finishes, because that's always something that I appreciate in matches. And
yeah,
the crowd
he can really beat you any way possible, huh?
Yeah, and the crowd did pull it up as well with like some of their unique chanting as they were doing all night. Did you guys notice what the chant was after the?
I could never tell.
Well, after the referee got taken out, they started chanting VAR.
No, what is that?
Well, VAR is a very, very, very British well, it's a very soccer football reference. VAR stands for video assisted replay, and it's something that has been introduced into the Premier League, which is the top soccer competition in the UK this year, which is used to help referees make decisions by using video assisted stuff. Like I don't know if you have any equivalent in like some of the US sports or anything like that.
No, we have the instant replay rule in like American football.
Yeah, so that's essentially what it's going to do. But everyone hates VAR because it interrupts it interrupts matches. It stops the game for about like 2-3 minutes at a time. The decisions they make seem to make no sense at certain points in time. So the crowd kind of uses it as a joke reference. So it's the idea of like when the referee goes down, and that point where Coffey gets a visual pinfall over Walter with the power bomb, they start chanting VAR because like get the video assistant there to let the referee know that he's got the pin, and that should be the match over. But
that's funny. You see, we would have had no fucking clue.
I just like the fact that is being introduced into these sort of things, because VAR is, as someone who watches an insane amount of football in the UK, VAR is like the topic of discussion for this entire year. So I love the fact that it's been taken into like wrestling events as well. So that was a lot of fun to me.
So if they don't like VAR, should they take something else off instead of their shoes? Is this one of those kind of scenarios?
Well, I can imagine that at some point in a wrestling show they said shoes off if you hate VAR or something like that, because that's how much everyone hates it. But yeah, so that was fun.
Colloquialisms.
Yeah,
humans are weird.
Yeah,
that's why UK audiences are the best audiences for wrestling.
Yeah, you're not going to hear any argument from me on that. I genuinely think there is a vibe that no other audience brings.
I don't know. We haven't seen like North Korea. They could be great.
Well, you have to cheer really badly on that one, otherwise, you know what the consequences are, right?
There is an international pay-per-view coming up on February 20th that we're not aware of yet where it actually is going to be. It could be Saudi Arabia, it could be Australia, North Korea, it could be
Iran.
Yeah, it could be Iran. Maybe it's going to be... There's plenty of horrible jokes that we could go down in a lot of different ways that, I don't know, maybe we'll do that on the Darkcast or something. But Walter retains, and they are celebrating in the ring. Imperium is all happy about this. And hey, fuck you guys. Worlds Collide's coming up soon. The Undisputed Era attacks them. And I thought that was awesome. That's a great way to get people talking about Worlds Collide. It's not the biggest pay-per-view in the world. And it's something that I feel they're going to be a little bit underwhelmed with. And like the response by, and people aren't going to tune in a whole lot and stuff. But maybe this will get some more people interested. So I think that was a smart decision, even though some people would try to argue that, like, well, that made Walter look bad or something. I don't think it made him look bad. I think that this was a good way to end the whole affair. Well,
I'll put it this way: on the spectrum of having Walter job out to Drew McIntyre in 2 minutes to this definitely didn't make Walter look bad.
Yeah,
but it's still, with every single instance of this kind of thing doing it, is hurting his mystique a little bit. But he still feels pretty indomitable in terms of just with the UK roster. But then you see like Adam Cole and the Undisputed Era come in and the crowd go crazy because it's the Undisputed Era. And part of that is just due to the fact that they weren't expecting it, and that's a nice surprise. But also part of it is it felt like, well, oh great, the real stars turned up. It's like, it's like, wow, so I know, but and you're completely right with that. It's just a case of, so the UK audience just like, oh, we've got to see this nice show with all of our like top guys in the UK. Right? Holy shit, the Undisputed Era! Forget everything that we just saw. Doesn't matter about anybody else. The Undisputed Era here. So it makes it already feels like NXT UK is like a second-rate show, which maybe it is, but you shouldn't be presenting it as that.
It kind of feels like it just took over for the UK independent scene, and when you saw the Undisputed Era pop in, it was like, oh cool, stars from American television, yeah, fuck yeah.
Americans invading things. We could go down this rabbit hole again too.
So let that show to Ron.
I kind of hope that what they do is they follow through with this, with Imperium attacking on NXT next week, because that
should, yeah.
I mean, if they don't, then Imperium kind of looks weak. So what's the game plan for NXT this week? It's the number one contender battle royal for Rhea Ripley, which is already like, hey, Rhea Ripley's gonna retain that title against Toni Storm, haha, like that kind of thing. There's Kushida and Alex Shelley, Time Splitters against Grizzled Young Veterans.
That's so cool, by the way.
And
I think they'll do a Southwest Subculture against.
Yeah, that's right. Them against the Broserweights.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's all they've said so far. So they haven't said about anything that is going to directly tie with the Undisputed Era or anything with Imperium. So they could do something like that. That would be a way to, if they advertise like, Roderick Strong's going to cut a promo about his upcoming match with Keith Lee, and then, Imperium attacks or something like that. Like, they should do something like that.
All we're aware of is that there will be like NXT UK superstars on the show already. So there is obviously room for a lot of stuff to happen. I imagine, because this is very typical of WWE, even if it does extend to NXT, there'll probably just be a massive brawl at the end of it between NXT UK and NXT superstars. Because they're very unoriginal when it comes to that stuff. That's
either happening this coming Wednesday or the next one. Because this coming Wednesday is not the go home for Worlds Collide, thankfully, because they've only announced a couple matches. But on the January 22nd or 23rd, whatever that is, 22nd.
Yeah.
I'm fully anticipating the typical,
oh my God,
everybody clashes. And this is going to break down at Worlds Collide this Saturday. And we forgot that we didn't plug this ahead of time, but there's a brawl. Go and watch it. Royal Rumble.
Man.
Yeah. So at least this was a good way to get people talking a little bit more. I don't think it's going to be the saving point to make Worlds Collide some kind of show where people are signing up for the network for it. But then again, they're doing that for the Royal Rumble anyway, which WWE doesn't seem to have a full 100% game plan for the Royal Rumble. So yeah, remember that whole just wait until Survivor Series. Just wait until Royal Rumble. Just wait until Mania. Just wait until 2040.
I think they have. God, you skipped the 30s entirely. Okay.
Everybody knows the 2030s are going to be shit. Future Toni, don't go back and be like, you were right.
And you won't have a chance to. The world will be dead by then.
Yeah. If we make it to 2025, we're good.
Yeah. If I make it to the 2030s to be able to look back on it, it's going to be very surprising as it is.
You're going to be Toni too.
Yeah.
It's a reference to Mewtwo, but don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
So, Callum, what is life about?
I guess dealing with the pain in any way you can.
And the way I choose to deal with pain is by drowning my life in wrestling, specifically wrestling involving the Undisputed Era. So the end of the show worked for me.
Yeah, I deal with my pain by watching other people inflict fake pain on each other.
Exactly. It's like there's this weird catharsis about it.
That's a much safer way than dealing out the pain yourself.
Yeah.
Or turning it onto yourself. Some people
especially
like that.
When Walter's involved, I didn't want to try to hurt him.
I'm pretty sure if I tried to slap him, I'd get hurt. Do one of those chops, and I'd just be like, my fucking hand. The hell did you do that for? And I'll be like, I didn't do anything. And I'm like, I know. Why? So yeah, that's NXT UK TakeOver Blackpool 2. I am assuming that the next time we're going to come around with an NXT UK TakeOver, it's going to be NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff 2, but maybe they'll switch it up a little bit, and who knows when that's going to happen because they haven't announced it yet. We could have the potential for matches with the NXT UK side of things at Portland. We could have that at Tampa. We could have that just regular matches throughout the, every week, every Thursday they do NXT UK. So you got to pay attention to that, I guess. But the next thing from NXT UK that's going to happen is that eventually we're going to have next week spoilers up and then the next set of tapings. And then we'll see how that goes after that point. So stay tuned for that on the website. We've got some other things to talk about, but before I talk about that, I'm going to give these guys a chance to plug what they've got going on. Callum?
You can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14 and check out all of the weekly articles on smark.moment.com, including the power rankings, which is my contribution, but all the other stuff is great to read as well. So while you're on there, just have a read at all the weekly stuff.
And if you get done reading all the weekly stuff and you're like, I still need more wrestling in my life, you can go over to WrestleZone.com or Fightful.com, which are the two sites that I contribute to, in addition to Smark Out Moment. and just click around all that stuff. I know Fightful Select has updated information on the Tessa Blanchard controversy, so plenty of wrestling news for you to go out and find, and I'm somehow associated with a lot of them.
And if you still are like, I need more wrestling, then you have an addiction and you need help. And
and maybe you're trying to deal with the pain a little too much.
There's too much pain going around. So check out all that stuff. Check out the stuff that I've got cooking on Bleacher Report, Knee Wrestling News, and all over the place here. Obviously, Smark Out Moment is the hub for all the Smark Out Moment stuff. So if you don't find it on the channel, you should check the website because there's plenty of things that are happening just on the website. You should check out that Darkcast whole thing on Patreon. Check out the previous episodes of different things that we've done on the YouTube channel and elsewhere. If you are on the audio-only platforms, leave us a rating. It helps out quite a bit. If you're on YouTube, give us a like, leave a comment, all that stuff that I've mentioned before. As far as what's coming up next, we have the hot tags on tomorrow. Today's Sunday. Forgot about that. I'm thinking today's Saturday. Oh, there goes part of my weekend. God damn. So they're thinking I've got tomorrow as another day. Oh, screw that. We got the hot tags coming up tomorrow night. So I know at the very least we're going to talk about the WWE ice cream bars coming up in Good Humorous shipments. And we're going to talk some other things. You know, the Broken Skull sessions about Kane and potentially anything with the Tessa Blanchard thing if we know anything more. You know, it's just whatever happens. So stay tuned for that. And we also have a fan outs table coming up. We're going to do the Royal Rumble 2010 match. So with that, it's the same kind of thing as what the fan tracks are and the other fan outs tables are. We're going to watch the match. We're going to do our commentary to go along with it. You guys will be able to listen to that. Along with that is kind of just like almost like a DVD special or so. So that's happening. Then after that, we've got Worlds Collide and the Royal Rumble. So we will do our usual predictions and post shows for both of those. And then we're going to get into the quarterly mailbag. Now, I mentioned before, mailbags are going to be quarterly. At least we're going to try to make them quarterly instead of monthly, just to kind of, you know, freshen things up a little bit, make it to where we're not answering the same questions a lot, and different things like that. So this is going to be your first one of 2020. This is your time to get anything in there, so start thinking of your questions and submit them whenever you want to. As long as you do that before we do the mailbag, then you know we're going to answer as many of them as we can, because we won't do another one of them until most likely after WrestleMania. I don't know if we're going to do one right before, but I kind of highly doubt it, so we'll see. I'll keep you posted on the Mega Maniacs Facebook group if anything changes about some different things and stuff, which is where I'm also tossing out the ideas of different segments that we might do in the future. So stay tuned for Missed the Smark, for Wrestling is 2020, and a couple other things too. But you will be aware of that when it's up. In the meantime, that's going to do us in for this edition. Thank you for listening to this. We will see you next time, everybody. This has been another Smark Out moment, and we're being counted out.